everyone. It's Tony with another fantastic episode of Women In. I have a fabulous guest, and I'll tell you all about her in a minute, but let me tell you what you're listening to. Women In is a podcast that celebrates women and the individuals in their lives who are lifting them up. You're going to hear from someone amazing today, and she's going to share her story to inspire others to support all the extraordinary women around them. This is a space to be disruptive, forward-thinking, and change agents for humankind. It is uncensored, fun, and curiosity-driven. This is what I'm passionate about, breaking down the barriers for my kids' generation. It's equal parts about my guests and the places we came into each other's lives, whether it be the Kalamazoo Wings, Mindfulness Elevated, Tony Will Coaching, or they happen to be in my family and friends circle. My guest today is April Rocco. April is an experienced K-12 educator, a former middle school athletic director, and currently a high school assistant athletic director dedicated to using sports as a means to enhance student opportunities both in the classroom and beyond. With over 25 years of experience in public education, April has leveraged her passion for sports to build connections with students and families in her community. In her role as an assistant athletic director, she has worked to provide leadership opportunities for athletes and is actively working to increase participation in athletics among younger students. Hi, April.
Hi.
I am so excited to have you on, and I always ask the first question so people can understand how we came into each other's lives, and it's always unique. And so, how did we meet?
So my sister-in-law, Kathleen Widener, and I'm not sure how you guys know each other. She owns the Spirit of Kalamazoo downtown, and for a long time, she's been trying to connect me with you, saying, you should reach out, you should meet her, she's great. And so over Thanksgiving, she was just like, I really want you to reach out. And so that's the connection. And I'm not sure, I don't know if it's through some downtown leadership type thing where you guys met, but Kathleen is the one.
Kathleen is fabulous, and we're recording this in late December, and this will come out in the first quarter of 2025, but yesterday was Kathleen's birthday, so happy birthday,
Yes.
Kathleen. And so Kathleen and I met years ago, gosh, about 15 years ago when I was at the Chamber of Commerce in Kalamazoo. And I actually met Andy before I met Kathleen. Andy is Kathleen's husband, and he and I did triathlons together eons ago. So that is kind of the connection. And then we moved, we bought our house here, and we live across the lake from each other. So we're neighbors.
Oh, okay, that's great.
So, and I love to ask this question about how people meet because it is all about relationships. And in a small town, a small-ish town like Kalamazoo, and connecting people, it gives me such energy, and I love to hear other people's stories. And yeah, Kathleen, I stopped by the house, and she was like, I want you to meet my sister-in-law. And I'm like, connect us, let's do it. So here we are.
Right.
Here we are. So April and I were talking off air. This is our first podcast, and I love first-time podcast guests. I would say the majority. I'd have to go back and look at the stats, but because I want to tell stories that other people aren't telling yet. And I'm the daughter of an educator. My mom is a retired school teacher. And so I just have such a heart around education and where you've spent your career. So talk to me about what made you decide to go into K-12. And I know sports is a big part of this. And believe it or not, for all those that know, sports is a huge part of my life because of being the GM of the Kalamazoo Wings. So April, how did you start down this path in your career, and that's been 25 years strong and going?
So I'm from a family of educators. Both of my parents were educators. My dad was a teacher, then a principal, and a superintendent. And my mom was a longtime teacher, so I grew up surrounded by it. And I just kind of loved it. Loved being involved in everything. I wasn't a fabulous student. I was a decent student. I was pretty good at sports, so that gave me lots of joy. And went to school. I ran track at Central Michigan, and just even with the track team there, we had to do volunteer work with different schools and not huge projects, but little things here and there. And I just really, really enjoyed it and realized that kids was just kind of what I was meant to do. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so you ran track. Did you do other sports growing up as well?
I did. Yep. I was a three-sport athlete. So, basketball, that's when basketball was in the fall in
Hmm.
Michigan. Before that move. So, basketball, volleyball, and track.
And
So,
was track what you were passionate, like you loved the most out of the three, or did you just happen
no,
to?
I just got a scholarship for it. And actually, I should clarify because whenever I say I ran track, then people want to know what I ran. I really didn't run anything. I high jumped. I was not that fast, but I could jump.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, that's pretty
so
cool.
yeah, no. I mean, I liked them all. It was kind of like whatever season I was in, that was my favorite. Um, so yeah, and I was fortunate. I went to a small school, and a lot of my classmates the year above me and the year below me were pretty strong athletes. So we had a lot of success um, going through. Um, just we kind of hit that jackpot of timing, right? Um, so yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, and there's such a strong connection between women who now women or young female athletes and their connection to depending what they choose to do for a living, but specifically in leadership, which is where I spend a lot of my time. And right now, I believe the statistic is, well, there's 51% women make up 51% of the global population, and in leadership and in business, 24% of women make up C-suite executives. And there's those 24%, I think it's in the high 90s that were athletes as children are coming of age. And so, and now this is where you spend time in this space as an assistant athletic director and seeing these, what, regardless of their young boys or girls, but seeing them come of age and how important sports is to that. And tell me why that is, even your story or the students you see, and the role athletics and sports play in that, in their coming of age and as they become adults and wherever they go in their careers.
Yeah. So, well, I think the really obvious things, the discipline, making sure you're there, the following what's expected to you, um, teamwork, being able to work with other people. I think even sometimes what gets kind of forgotten about is the ability to lose, to go out
Mm.
there, be in front of a bunch of people, and I mean, sometimes it just goes disastrous, like disastrously, and you just have to like force yourself to come back. And I talk to kids about that a lot. Like, you're not the only one that's ever gone out and played a game and just been embarrassed in front of a bunch of people, but you were brave enough to go out there. And I think that that's a big, because that gets into the risk taking. So if you're willing to go out and take risk in sports, I mean, that's a pretty safe environment. But socially, that's hard for middle school and high school kids to go out and have things go bad. Um, so I think those are kind of what I would consider the obvious things. And then I don't know, what I consider my role now is trying to help fold in some leadership opportunities and hand over some control, having them work clinics for little kids and be the ones in charge, help plan those things. So, yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that stat, especially for women, um, because
Yeah.
I think it's just natural.
Yeah, and I so I grew up as a gymnast, and then that morphed into cheerleading, which, by the way, everyone who's listening, it is a sport.
Yeah.
And but when I came of age, it was like just becoming a sport, like recognized that way. And then that just I've just had a love for fitness and nutrition and leadership and business, and it all kind of came together in as I got older and all of that. And then as you know, you're Andy and I did triathlons together, and I spent a big chunk of my 30s doing all that. And you never know where it's going to lead you. And it is, I love what you said about why losing and risk taking is important. as a GM of a men's professional hockey team, you would think every time we lose, the world's coming to an end from some of our fans. Like,
Uh,
seriously. But that's important. Like, we play a 72 game season. It's not like we're going to be undefeated 72 games. Like, that's not realistic.
right.
And
Yeah.
there's so many great lessons in losing and this notion of failure. So I love it's such a great point. Now you work with middle schoolers, correct?
I did. I'm at one of the high schools now.
Okay, which high
So
school?
Loynoric. So I was at Millwood Middle School 12 years, and then I moved here. This is my 5th year here.
Okay.
So
Middle
I've been with
schoolers,
both.
middle schoolers are, so let's talk about these middle schoolers for just a minute. Because that's a tough age. Like,
Yeah, yeah. It, so it's, but I will say, middle school's great because if you, for me at least, I went from elementary to middle school. Um, so it took me about 2 years, and I was very arrogant when I went. Like, oh, this will be easy. I'll just build rapport, and it'll be great. And the first year was just like, what did I get myself into? Um, but once you get the rhythm of middle school students and all that activity, I mean, it's pretty sweet uh, with
yeah.
everything. But it's definitely, or at least it was for me, an acquired taste to get there.
Well, it goes back to what you were saying. Like I do this too. Like I'm like I can figure this out, and
Yeah,
sometimes that works out for me, and sometimes it doesn't. But it goes back to like risk taking and thinking, wow, I just fell flat on my face on this, and I got a lot to learn. I actually love that. I mean, it like so did year two when you were like, man, this was I didn't perform the way I expected. Did that just fuel you to do better the next year?
yeah, yeah. And I really had to change my entire approach. And that's where getting back involved with sports, that's the easiest way for me to connect with kids and families. It's what I know, it's what I like. I think it comes through. I'm genuine about it. So I wasn't involved with, I think I was maybe volunteer coaching, but I just started showing up to games and watching the cross country race and walking. If I was leaving, I'd go stand in the gym for a few minutes while the volleyball games were finishing up, and that was just building those connections with kids and the families. So when we were running into issues in the classroom or in the regular school day, I wasn't just this random person reaching out. It was, oh, this was this Rocco, she was watching my volleyball game. Now she needs me to be quiet and work in my classroom.
Yeah. Well, it humanizes you. Like it
Yes.
makes you, because you know how teachers, I would see this growing up when my mom would run into one of her students, say at the grocery store, and they're like, oh my gosh, they're actually human. They do, like, you
Right.
don't just live in your classroom
Right.
and they see you like cheering them on at something that they love to do in sports and that you're involved too.
Yep.
And and how I want to talk a little bit about how you said something really powerful there, that there's a lesson in this for everyone. When things aren't working, you changed your approach and you went to sports because that's where you're comfortable. So did you intuitively just did you sit down and think, how can I make this better, or were you just like going where the breadcrumb trail took you?
I think where the breadcrumb trail took me, I mean, I knew I was not being successful. So I did know I had to change. Um, and yeah, it was just, that was a natural way. I think the third year, I don't know, it was early when I was there. They, a middle school, the cross country coach resigned or didn't come back and no one would do it. And I did. That was kind of like a beautiful mess too. So like I coached these middle school kids who don't know what cross country is. Like every day they're like, do we really have to run? And it's like, this is like, it's the only thing I can offer you for this sport. But I also didn't really know anything about cross country. So I was just like the last adult to touch my nose, and I had to coach these kids. But we got through and had fun, and I successfully talked a first year teacher into taking that the next year. So who
It's
actually did great. Um,
it's like,
but
hey
yeah,
kids, it's called cross country for a reason because you're
yeah,
running across the country.
yeah. It's like every day. We even get that sometimes at high school, like a track practice. Like, really, do I have to run? It's like, well, you have like three other choices, but you're probably still going to have to run. But I love that you want to be involved. But yes, you have
Yeah.
to run.
Yeah, oh gosh. So how did you know that you were not succeeding? Like what told you that? Like when you were like, I got to change directions, and because you said I knew I wasn't being successful. How did you know?
Um, well, I mean, I was just really happy, and I recognized how I was speaking to students. Everything was harsh. Um,
Mm.
and so, I mean, I don't think I would have wanted to have been in my classroom either. Um, so I just kind of recognized that this is too negative. Um, I taught special education at the time, and I worked with a paraeducator, and I had her do a T chart, and I put positives and negatives on one side, and we did one class period, and I wanted her to do tally marks every time I said something positive to the class and every time I said something negative to the class. And I mean, it was, now I wish I would have saved the paper just for like comedic relief, but it was so bad. And I kept saying, you must have missed positives, I was saying, because it was so negative. And so it was just like recognizing that, yeah, this isn't, I'm not enjoying it. They're not enjoying it. My coworkers probably aren't. Um, and we had lots of coaches coming into the meeting at the time and giving us feedback and advice. And I think that having the T chart was one of the things they suggested. And so,
What a great tool. Oh my gosh, I love this. I mean, anybody in any job, whether you're in business, education, an entrepreneur, whatever, to do this T chart and just ask for someone to observe you and say, look at how many positive things you've done and just do it, you know,
right.
hash mark, and then negative. Wow. I love
Yeah.
that. And it seems so simple and obvious, but this is such a great tip. I'm going to do this. I don't know if I
Yeah.
want
No,
to know the
it
results.
really was. I think that was one of the most powerful things, because you don't recognize it. You think you're, well, at least I do. I err on the side of I'm doing pretty great. So sometimes I need
Me too,
to
April.
have, yeah, someone show me that there's room for growth, and that was really really a strong indicator that make a lot more just efforts.
I want to change gears a little bit because
Yep,
I love Kalamazoo. Born and raised here. I grew up in Vicksburg, which is just south of Kalamazoo.
yep.
Went to Western Michigan University. Never left. And although when my husband and I moved to this house, I did move out of Kalamazoo County finally, and now I live in a different county, but just a mile outside of Kalamazoo.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
just a big joke because he was like, "Can you live in a different county?" And I'm
yeah.
like, "I don't know. We'll find out." Um, Spoiler alert, I can do it.
Right.
But I want to talk about Kalamazoo Public Schools for a minute because this is when I'm interviewed for by other outlets or other podcasts that don't know a lot about Kalamazoo. One of the, we talk about how, and for those who don't know who are listening to this, we're smack dab in the middle of between Chicago and Detroit off I-94 in Southwest Michigan. One of the things we're known for a lot of things in Kalamazoo, like celery, checkered cabs,
Yeah.
Gibson guitars, and we're also known for the Kalamazoo Promise. And so I'd love to talk about that for a minute, April, because we have such a philanthropic piece to the fabric that is our city and specifically Kalamazoo Public Schools. So why don't you tell everyone what the Kalamazoo Promise is because you are a teacher in Kalamazoo Public Schools.
Yeah, so the Kalamazoo Promise is, well, initially it started out as a scholarship program. Um, And if your child goes first through 12th grade, 100% of tuition and mandatory fees are covered. And then I think it's like starting in third grade, whenever you join, it gets a little bit smaller, the percent that gets paid. If you start as a ninth grader, it's, I believe, 65% of the tuition and mandatory fees are covered. But it's really expanded. They do summer internship programs. They do scholarship writing days. We have promise coaches in our buildings that work with students helping get college ready. And I really break it up all the time. I have I had a foster son that I helped get through school, and then two boys. One is a sophomore at Michigan State, one is a senior right now. And it's just been amazing for them. My sophomore at Michigan State was part of I wish I knew the actual name of it, but their like internship program that they had last summer. And it was amazing. He was paired with Big Brothers Big Sisters. They had meetings once a week where they did like job readiness skills. Even like they got a headshot, they made their LinkedIn account, and just lots of things to help launch them professional manner. He participated in like a 3 or 4 week scholarship writing, don't know, activity basically, but he went down, they did some work, fine-tuning their scholarship applications, they had lunch, they networked with kids from all of the schools, Phoenix, Kalamazoo Central, Illinois, Norix, and it was just really, really nice. And so my youngest son is just kind of starting that path right now. So yeah, I can't say enough about it. And especially those extra things. And I mean, we just pulled up his bill from Michigan State, and it's amazing to see what you would be paying and what you are paying.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's pretty life-changing.
Very life-changing, and the power of education and this is privately funded, anonymously, and it's 20 years old now, the Kalamazoo Promise, I believe.
Yeah. Yep.
And
And it's sorry to interrupt.
no.
They also are moving into helping trades, and like those smaller certifications, programs that might not fit into what I think it originally started as. So like a 12-week program now can cover some of them under that. So it's amazing.
It is really it's just Kalamazoo is just such a well-rounded community, and this just adds to I don't know, just the fabric of what Kalamazoo is and what we're about and how we want the next generation, the things that you and I are passionate about, to achieve their goals and have all the tools that they need. And they might not know they need until they're like, oh, like, and even that the tuition's prorated based if they move into the school district, whether it's an elementary school, middle school, high school. It's not an all or nothing program. It is phenomenal. I'm so proud of it, and it's amazing that, and I just love that you're an educator in that school system. And were you with Kalamazoo Public Schools before? Because you've been in education for 25 years. So you were there when it was announced.
Yep. And my son was 1, maybe, not even. And I just remembered, like, this can't be right. Like, I just not really understanding it when they announced it at the board meeting. And I mean, I think that's when you actually like got the paper too. And so we, board meetings are on Thursdays, and excuse me, we didn't have school that Friday. And so a group of our friends that were all educators with 1 to 3-year-olds, we went out for breakfast or lunch, and we were just like, is this kids will be able to go to school for free? Like, we were just so confused.
What? Yeah.
Right. And I remember my principal at the time, like 2 weeks later at a staff meeting, he had two high school daughters, and he was like, my wife went into our financial advisor and immediately put a stop to the money we were putting aside for college. So,
How, I mean, and that alone, like when you hear something like that, and you, because there's so much pressure as a parent sometimes to be like, like we have to stay for their education because we want the best for our children, but it's like, it's hard when you're
yeah,
raising a young family and, wanting to, there's all these other financial commitments. I mean, the amount of relief that comes from that, like, it's just so, and for years and years and years to come, like, when you're of a 1 year old and you're like, oh my gosh, like 17
right.
years from now, I don't have to worry about this. This is awesome.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. And the work they do now with really, if kids are willing to go to their workshops, they're going to help you find other scholarships too. So, like my son, and he didn't get like a ton, but he got a fair amount that helped cover the board. And it was all done with those promise coaches. Um, and that was nice too because your senior child can be a little touch and go at times, and so having
I got one too, April.
okay, there you go. So having another adult, and they're kind of young adults, help get them through that process was also nice
Yeah,
because it wasn't us harping on them.
yeah, so cool. So let me talk about the gender in education. Because the podcast is women in, and but I have men and women on my podcast. My brother-in-law is actually a fourth grade teacher, and when my mom was a teacher, or even my favorite teacher, by the way, what growing up, was Mr. Nimmo, and he was my first grade teacher. And I used to have pigtails. I remember he would like pull on them, and it was just,
Uh-huh.
it was such a rarity to have a male teacher. And so, how, and in your 25 years, are you seeing more men come into education? And by the way, if I had a male teacher, it was usually my gym teacher. Mr. Nimmo back in the 80s was like cutting edge.
Uh-huh.
So, what are you seeing in that? Because typically education has been more female oriented, but are you seeing a rise in male teachers come into the school district? And what, from your vantage point and being an educator, what are you seeing?
So I think my view would be biased based on what level I'm looking at. So
Hmm.
at the secondary levels, you tend to see more males. So now I'm like, yeah, there's kind of a lot of guys going into education, but I think that's just because I'm at the high school. So, and that tends to be, I just think a higher rate of men going to education go to the secondary level. I think it's certainly female dominated. I'm pretty sure I saw for the first time this maybe this year, or they probably have data from last year, um, that there was an increase in students in general going into education programs in the state, because that was just kind of a free fall for a long time.
Hmm.
And I think that's starting to rebound a little bit. The state is putting lots of money into programs like these grow your own programs. So that's funding where schools are just trying to recruit students from their own buildings and get them to go into education. But of course, and then we want you to teach here for a few years,
Hmm.
which makes sense. So I think those programs will help quite a bit. Um, but yeah, I guess I'm just not sure.
Yeah.
My husband's a principal at an elementary, and he always jokes about when all of the elementaries need a teacher and there's a male candidate, how it's just like blood in the water, like everyone's going.
Right, because it
Yeah,
is still female dominated, right? And
absolutely,
so
yes.
what I like to point out is that this, um, that men can be in the minority position just as much as women can. It just depends on the field, right? And so,
Correct.
now I am a woman in a male dominated industry, but when we're talking about, say, your husband and as a principal or an educator himself, and the men are, even a white male can be a minority in certain spaces. That's why I talk about this. Like, it's about inclusivity in all areas. and that it can be challenging, right? Like, I mean, hey, if you're a dude and you want to become a teacher, you are not going to have a problem getting a job. So,
Well, and I say that all the time to students. And so the class I teach is a teacher academy class. So it's where we recruit students that go into education, and I try to talk to them about being marketable and degrees in science, degrees in math, and how if you want to be an elementary, like if you're a female and you want to be an elementary teacher, that's great, but so do so many people. And so maybe tie it with a minor in something that's really desirable. And if you're, and I do have some male students. In fact, my son is at Michigan State's going into education, and um, and we've talked to him about there aren't a ton of male teachers. You're right, but there of the male teachers, there's a lot that want to do history. And
really?
yeah, I mean, I don't even know if that's like truly proven, but like that's my anecdotal. And of course, he wants to like teach history. So, like he's not getting the science, chemistry, math. He's just like, yeah, history. Be a coach. Like, so yeah, I do think that like making yourself desirable is important in the field. Um, because I don't know. I mean, there's the teacher shortage is real,
Hmm.
but I don't know if it's going to swing the other way. You know, in like 5 or 6 years, and then I mean the data is not really showing that, but there's a lot of things that impact it. So
Yeah, I know. When I remember, so my mom, as I mentioned, was a school teacher. Her twin sister, school teacher. Her older sister, school teacher. And back
uh-huh.
then, like, it teachers like it. It wasn't a rarity. Like a lot of people were going into education, and then yeah, I think just the, when you talk about educators are vastly underpaid, and people are. My mom would say to me, "Are you going to be a teacher?" And I'm like, "No." Like, and not I just didn't think I had the patience for it, right? Like that just, but now my daughter is, she's a senior at Gull Lake and she's going into, she wants to be a special ed teacher.
Uh-huh.
And so, and I love that for her. I'm like, this is fantastic because you're not going to have a problem getting a job wherever, and you won't have to worry about that part of it. And, um, but it is. I'll be interested to see too if the pendulum swings in the other direction.
Right.
I hope it does because this is how our kids, this is how they learn and grow, and their teachers are so influential and so important. And so let me ask you this: with women in dot dot dot, the name I put the dots on there on purpose because when I originally thought about this podcast and why I wanted to do it, it was because of being a woman in sports. Um, but I was like, I wanted to tell other stories and make it broader. So I asked all my podcast guests how they would fill those dots in. I've gotten some amazing answers, and they're all different. Now I sat there, so well, I'm a woman in sports, I'm a woman in entrepreneurship, but there's so many bigger, I don't know. So no pressure, but how would you fill in those dots?
Yeah, I saw that question, and I had a couple that I left. Like I tried to write out some of the things when I got the questions, and that was one that sat for a long time, and actually until like last night at like 10, where I was like, all right. But I think education and leadership.
Yeah.
I think it just always goes back to that. It's really what my circle is.
Hmm.
It's what my friends are all in. So yeah, I think education and leadership.
I love it. Yeah. And I love how I send you these questions and I've asked you like two of them. So
Yeah. I know I keep glancing. I'm 2 screens up. So,
April's like, when are you going to ask me this? I warned her off air, everyone. I'm like, I tend to go down rabbit holes because there's so many interesting things. Okay, let me ask you something else, though. Who are the women in your life who have shaped April to become April? And like, who do you surround? You just mentioned you surround yourself with a lot of similar educators. And so who are these women that have helped you shape the woman you are today?
well, so I'm fortunate enough. I have a strong relationship with my mom, and she was an educator and is a highly involved person, like with her community and even politically. She gets involved, and so she's a good role model. My um, sister-in-law, and I have a strong relationship. So Kathleen, and seeing her navigate the business world, and owning a business, so that's nice. And then kind of have a team of educators that I either have worked with in the past or currently work with that I like to bounce ideas off of. Um, so I'll, do you want me to just rattle off some of their names or?
Yes, I love,
Uh,
and yeah, now let me ask you this. Does your mom listen to podcasts?
no.
You'll have to teach her how to do it. But what's your mom's name?
Linda Widener.
Hi, Linda. I just
Yeah.
want to say hello to Linda. And it's just, I love saying the moms' names because some moms don't listen to podcasts, but I'm like, we can show them how and press play and then they can.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So run through the list. Like, what are the names? Because I think it's important to lift these women up.
Yeah. So these are the people, like if I come up with some kind of project or something I'm going to do, these are the women that I tend to reach out to for advice. Dawn Kaler
Mhm.
is a teacher at Millwood Middle School, and she is also does coaching. She coaches basketball for them. And is really working to try to recruit girls and provide opportunities for them as well. And she's a science teacher, so good representation of women in science. Brandy Stiver is now at Millwood Middle School, and she is an assistant athletic director at Commerce Central. She used to be at Maple Street. She's kind of been all over the place.
Mhm.
So she's someone that I reach out to a lot, like if I'm trying to get students involved, especially like athletics. Those are two great resources. Shannon Parlato is a very good friend, and she works for the district. She's a like culture and climate coach and has written lots of successful grants, and she's just really involved with lots of cool projects. So she's one that I'll go to a lot, and she kind of recenters things. But if I'm being negative or kind of giving up on stuff, she's pretty good about like, no, remember you gotta like work through this and make
Mhm.
this happen.
Mhm.
So yeah, they're all really good. But we have a new team member. Her name's Lisa Aikens,
Mhm.
and she is the secretary for the athletic department here. This is her second year, and she's been amazing. Really jumps in to everything, and I don't know. She's younger too, so I think that breeds fresh air into things. So yeah, so those are kind of my go-to people. Um, Nakinga Bergen, she was worked for the district for a long time, and now she's at KBCC. She's vice president of one of the branches.
Mhm.
So those are the women that I would, if I'm coming up with something, probably reach out to, get some advice. Kim Porco works for Mattawan Public Schools, does lots of really cool projects with students, underrepresented students, the area that she's working. So yeah.
I love it. So what I call this circle that you just mentioned is like your internal board of directors, right? Like, so you have this group of women that you can go to and, like just bounce ideas off of, problem solve, just have camaraderie, friendship, community. And it's so important as we're both middle aged and figuring out what's next and navigating being middle aged and sandwiched too in the sense of we're raising our kids, but our parents are aging and we're smack dab in the middle of that phase of life. And how important it is to surround ourselves by other people that can help navigate these midlife waters. So
Right.
we're women in midlife too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a whole different story. Um,
Right.
so another question that I like to ask, and it's often, I'm curious to know if this one sat blank for a while too, because it can be a tricky one. But what have you changed your mind about lately? I like to ask this question because I'm just fascinated with all things having to do with brain health. My mom is in late stage Alzheimer's, and it kind of became a mission of mine to learn more about my brain and how to keep it healthier proactively. And so I like one of the major things I changed my mind about 4+ years ago is I stopped drinking alcohol. And not because of my mom's Alzheimer's, but because I didn't like my relationship with alcohol. Now, that is a big thing to change your mind about. But I've also changed my mind about I'm okay if I power walk on the treadmill. I don't need to run all the time. So something small. So I like to ask this question because one of the things about the brain is there's neuroplasticity. We are able to change our minds no matter what stage of life we're in, whether we're, you know, coming of age, midlife, in our 80s, whatever. We can literally change how we view the world and how we want to bring ourselves to the world. So that's a big intro, but and framing this question up. But what have you changed your mind about?
So, and this is different from what I wrote down, a totally different direction. Um, but one of the things that I was doing probably up until about this time last year is listening, like every day, listening to a little, whether it was on YouTube, kind of almost like self-helpy, motivational type stuff, tips on how to be more efficient, effective, and reading lots of books in that area. And so one of the changes I made was just you're not reading anymore or listening to anymore until you choose one and actually do that. Because listening to them doesn't make anything happen. The action makes it happen. So I kind of put a halt to the books and videos and I'm just focusing in like one area. And I read the 12-week year. You've read that.
I haven't read it, but I've. What did you think of it? I'm
I
intrigued.
really liked it. So it's just, basically breaking your goals down into 12-week cycles. And there's a lot of other things, but that was my takeaway. So I started that midsummer and I'm going to go one full year of just doing 12-week cycles of like goals, things I want to achieve and get done. And some of them are kind of big things, and others are like touch up the paint in the den, like, and
Yeah.
so, and that's really helped me. So I just wrote out I'm finishing up the second one. So I started writing out the third cycle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess was kind of being addicted to like almost self-help type stuff. Just
Me
want to
too.
stop to that. I don't know if you're not executing anything, why keep listening to it and reading about it. So,
Yeah. I love that. I'm a big goal setter. And actually, ironically, today is the last day on one of the goals I set for myself for 2024, which was um, 24 days of not watching TV the whole year. Like, so
okay,
I set a low bar because I thought, oh, I'll crush this 24 days.
right.
It's been very eye-opening. No, today is December 28th,
Yep.
and I am now, today will be day 24 of not watching TV the whole year. And it's fascinating to me how as busy as I am, how I still squeeze TV time. And I'm not making TV the enemy, but I want to see how I'm spending my time other than just watching TV. And it was harder for me than I thought. And so that's just one of the goals. So I'm going to hit it today, which is great. But I love reading books, and I read my age every year. So
That's a good way to do it.
yeah, and I listen to my age every year. So this June I'll be 47. So in 2025, 47 books, 47 podcasts, not my own. I don't count the ones that, even though I listen back to them
Uh-huh.
each year. But I find, to your point, it's like, okay, I'm reading these books. Where am I executing? And finding certain books where I'm like, wow, I can do some great work in this space. And so I've started to form book studies and things like that around these type of things. So I'm gonna have to check out the 12-week year. And I use this app. It's a habit app. It's just it's a $2.50 for the year, but I track my habits that are tied to my goals each at the end of each day. So read 30 minutes, check, or that way I can stay
Yeah.
motivated. It's kind of gamifying it. Flossing, check, like just certain things where I wanted to build consistency or things I wanted to stop doing. Like I noted that I was if some what are some of the things I want to stop? Oh, drinking soda or pop, depending on what people call it. I didn't
Yeah.
want to totally eliminate it, but I'm like I want to reduce my consumption of it, so I track that. And things like that. So it's been fun to track it and set goals specific to it, drinking 100 ounces of water, whatever. So 12-week year, I'll have to check that out. Great recommendation. And I'm
Yeah.
eager to see how you're. So what's one of your big goals for 2025? Now you're going to put it out here on this podcast, so you have to do it.
Oh boy. Um, well, so some of it is like setting up like leadership
Hmm?
things for students, and one of my big goals, but it's like one of my big goals is to get other people to do this. Is I would like for all of our varsity level sports to host clinics for our feeder middle schools. So
Nice.
every program that we have, I would love to have at least one clinic where, and it's Millwood Middle School and Maple Street Middle School are our feeders, where those kids come and get introduced to the sport, meet the high school kids, um, and some of the teams already do that. So it's just like, how can we continue that or make that a little bit better, and then build out these other ones. So that's my big goal. Is how can we get that to happen?
I love that. Oh, awesome. Well, I have no doubt you'll make it happen. And
I hope so.
and
Now
now
that
that
it's
it's
out
out,
there, now that it's out there, it's got
it's
to.
it's got to. It is out there. It will be out there. Oh, that's awesome. So, a couple more questions. So, how do you lift women up, April? What do you do to lift women up?
So I try to just stay, I think, and that was when I was embarrassed because I was just like, how do I? And do I? And no, I try to stay informed, especially like that circle, my circle that I talked about. They're always doing really cool things, and so it's whether I can hook them up with another person that can help. I can actually physically support them and be there, or resources, promote things. I'm lucky because um, I consider myself volunteer rich because I'm at a high school with kids in NHS, Key Club, and who want scholarships. And so, whether they're even doing it for the right reason or the wrong reason, there's 1,800 kids in this building. Just about like 300 of them need volunteer hours. So sometimes when my friends are doing different projects, it's just hooking them up, and so they have an extra set of hands, and then it's working for both people. So I think just trying to stay informed, and whether it's just being encouraging or picking them up with someone to help them is probably the best thing I can.
Yeah, when I started this podcast, I was well, one of the reasons, I mean there were many, but I was on a panel at Western Michigan University. It was for women empowerment. It was specific for college athletes, and they had asked me to be on the panel, and which I was happy to do because it's my alma mater. And what they sent me prep questions beforehand. And normally I don't like to do prep in that way. I just like to come authentic and answer the questions how I answer them. But I looked at the questions beforehand, and one of the questions was, who were your female mentors? And I sat there and I'm like, I did not have any.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, I want to do some work in this space. And so the podcast came out of this. I started a women in sports networking or coalition in the ECHL, which is the league that Kalamazoo Wings play in. And I just started like going to town because I'm like, I want to be able to help in any way I can, and connecting women and being a resource in whatever, whether it's education, sports, nonprofit, volunteer, all that. We're doing our part. And a lot of times we don't give ourselves credit. Like, we're like, how do I lift women up? And we do it, we just don't know we're doing it too. So I think that's a powerful message. So if people want to connect with you, April, where do they find you?
Probably LinkedIn
Yeah.
would be the best way.
Wonderful. That is the where you can find me too. LinkedIn. So yeah, if you want to connect with April, you can find her on LinkedIn, or you can connect with me, and I'll get you to April. And April,
Perfect.
it has been such a pleasure to get to know you, and just our connection to one another. And one day we'll meet in person. I'm sure. I'm sure you go over to their house. I can pop
That's
over.
why. And now that I know you're on the lake, I'll be floating on their pontoon boat in the summer. So,
Oh, I do have one more question. What is it like to be Andy's sister? Are you older than him or younger?
oh no, 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 I am younger.
Yeah.
Um,
Did he pick on you a lot?
Not anymore. No, it's great. Yeah, he is hilarious. He is very fun to be around. And actually all those things, but I do really admire his business mindset. He's great to my boys and provides work for them and business lessons. And so yeah, it's great, but yeah, he can be a little bit of a trip sometimes.
Oh God, he cracks me up, and that's the way to my heart is to make me laugh. And we would laugh about the triathlons we would do together because he's like, Tony, I'm swimming diagonal and you're swimming straight. Oh, we would die laughing, and I'm like, it's okay, you did it. Who cares?
Yeah. Well, maybe you were in the triathlon where he was the picture that made the paper where he was getting passed by the woman pushing the stroller.
Oh,
Um,
oh.
that was like the best thing that's ever happened to our family.
I mean, how could it not be? Yes, and it couldn't have happened to anyone better than Andy.
Right.
Well, it is so awesome to get to know you. Can't wait to meet you in person. If any podcast guests want or listeners want to connect with me, I'm not hard to find. kalamazooings.com, TonyWillCoaching.com, mindfulnesselevated.com. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn at Tony Lentini Will, and on Instagram at I'm Tony Will. And until next time.